A recent poll shows that a majority of voters believe that members of Congress should not actually be trading individual stocks, in large part because of the access they have to secret early information that can inform their financial decisions. But while that might not surprise you, how popular that position actually is just might, as well as how unpopular it is amongst those in Congress. So 3/4 of voters overall agree the members of Congress should not be able to trade stocks while serving in office. This is a survey commissioned, by the way, from the conservative advocacy group Convention of States Action. So 76% of voters believe that lawmakers and their spouses have an unfair advantage in the stock market. Just 5% of respondents approved of members trading stocks, while 19% gave no opinion. That's about as overwhelming a response to a poll question that I've ever seen. Now, that's just one poll, but we can put it in the context of we've talked about this for months. We know generally what people think. But here's the surprising part, not the 76% overall, but that it's 70% of Democrats, 78% of Republicans, and nearly 80% of independents believe that. So I wanna pause there. Like, the fact that it's bipartisan would be surprise enough. The fact that there's actually a larger percentage of Republicans, I mean, look, when you really think about it, I think it sort of makes sense from a certain point of view of conservatism, as well as the fact that this isn't the sort of issue that Fox News has really weaponized over the past couple of decades. So it's not a thing where a random conservative being asked about this can just think, okay, what did Kilmeade tell me to think? They might have to actually cross, interface the actual issue they're being talked about with their value system. But this is looking like, based on this is an issue that in theory could be a big winner if any politicians weren't financially incentivized to hold a very different position than the vast majority of Americans.
Right, well, before we get to Nancy Pelosi's point of view on this, and then the media will of course adopt whatever her point of view is and repeat it ad nauseum because she is their queen. Let's just clarify a couple of things. First of all, you've heard me say on this show a number of times, I actually think the Republican voters are ahead of the Democratic voters in figuring out how bad corruption is in this country. And boom, there it is, told you. A slightly bigger percentage of Republicans than Democrats think that corruption in terms of the insider trading in Congress is worse. And so why is that, by the way? Democrats are supposed to be the working class party, et cetera. It's because the greater percent, and I looked this up for a different reason today, but a much greater percentage of Democrats believe the mainstream media. And the mainstream media tells you the powerful and the elite are awesome. They never do anything wrong. Insider trading is fantastic, and you should never question the powerful. So unfortunately, a decent number of Democrats have totally internalized that, and that's a cult in and of itself. But overall, and other told you so is still the overwhelming majority of the country says, yeah, we hate corruption. We hate the politicians making money off the information they have and we don't have, and that's an unfair advantage. And one more lie that it exposes about mainstream media is the mainstream media claims they love bipartisanship. Oh my God, they've agreed to an infrastructure bill that is totally laden with corporate pork. I mean, bipartisan, I love bipartisanship. Well, great, then you guys should be thrilled about this. We have bipartisan, overwhelming bipartisan agreement. By the way, independents support the most because independents, part of the reason why they're independents is they can't stand either party, and they realize both parties are corrupt, right? So they have the highest number. So, but it doesn't matter, we all agree, boom, bipartisanship, we've got it. Only 5% of the country disagrees. So is the media demanding action on this? No, of course not. The Queen has said that it is perfectly acceptable, so they're moving on.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that like one of the things that I've seen when I've worked on campaigns in the past, and especially doing like caucuses and stuff like that, is there's a contingent of the Democratic Party, that is to say Democratic voters, who have two beliefs. The first belief is that they themselves are a very smart person And the other is that Democrats elect very smart people. And the problem is when you have this internal belief that you're unquestionably a smart person, is that if anybody comes in with a new idea or something different, you're scared of your new idea being criticized and then people questioning, oh, is this person really smart? And so they tend to point to the person with the most authority around them and say, well, this person, well, Nancy Pelosi must be smart, right? I mean, she's the Speaker of the House, of course she's smart. So I'm gonna say what Nancy Pelosi says. And my frustration is that from my experience, those are some of the most involved people. Like those are the people who like really make it their business to be like local officials within the Democratic Party, to always show up to caucuses and to definitely show up to primaries. And they just have this sort of mentality of we should elect smart people. We should vote for Pete Buttigieg because he knows 7 languages. I mean, but not really. Don't speak Swedish to him, like. And that sort of mentality, I think, is one of the reasons why there's more Democrats that are willing to say, oh, I'm sure there's some sort of galaxy brain reason why Nancy Pelosi is trading in the stock market. It's just because she really is buying into America. That's what it is. It's definitely not corruption.
Yeah. So we're gonna show you Pelosi's clip, but I've just gotta say, Ben's show is called Galaxy Brain, and I was a Galaxy Brain pro. I had not heard that before, and that is exactly right. I mean, it resonated with me instantly. Almost every so-called moderate Democrat I know, they're obsessed with being smart and that the people in power are so smart. Oh, Cenk, how could you possibly know? I mean, they are the great and holy, powerful people. They're the smartest people on earth. And what you connected in terms of that's why they're so afraid of new ideas, it's brilliant, Ben, exactly right.
Exactly, and a great plug for the show. I need to start slipping the damage report into my commentary. I keep forgetting that. Okay, so really fast, let's go to that video. Here's Nancy Pelosi explaining her incredibly unfinancially biased position on stock trading amongst members of Congress.
Should members of Congress and their spouses be banned from trading individual stocks while serving in Congress?
No, I don't know to the second one. Because this is a free market and people, we're a free market economy, they should be able to participate in that.
So it might occur to you watching this that that's a stupid point because of course we're not in a free market, but it's an especially stupid point considering exactly what she's being asked about, because the entire point is that you all have access to secret information. It is by its very nature not a free market. It's a very, very unfree market when you're making decisions to benefit yourself financially. Whether those are just having secret information, which then warps Wall Street since you can act on these things and regular people can't because they're not in these meetings, or when you're potentially actually choosing to pass or not pass certain types of legislation or stuff legislation with pork for certain industries and not others to benefit yourself as well. And that is on top of the insane corruption of allowing you to be handed large sums of money by individuals or corporations. None of this is acceptable to any regular people, as is evidenced by the poll we showed you. The only issue is that everyone who's in a position of power, largely, aside from a couple people who talk about these issues a lot, like AOC talks about individual stock ownership, Elizabeth Warren does. Other than that, they're all in favor of her position. Maybe they won't come out and say it, and they won't bumble their answer as much as she does, but they hold the same position, and why wouldn't they? It's in their own financial interest to do so.
Yeah, well, look, let me do a damage report on that video.
Oh, you young Turk, you.
Okay, no, seriously, I just have a quick comment to make, and it's doubling down on what John said. You remember that all this came up originally because the senators were caught doing insider trading when they had information about COVID that the public didn't. And instead of warning the public about the health dangers, etc., they went and made millions of dollars in stock trades. So that is the exact opposite of a free market when you have an unfair advantage. So Nancy Pelosi acts like a Republican there, where words have no meaning, and she lives in an alternate reality where the opposite of a free market is actually the free market. Since she said that, it's never been an issue because the Queen spoke, so all the Democrats were done with it. The Republicans loved the corruption, and the media said, well, our Queen has spoken, so obviously we'll now lay down.
Yeah. Ben, final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, like, the real thing is, how can you be a fair arbiter of legislation if you have a buy-in, right? Like, I mean, that's the thing, right? If they were investing in companies that would have profited off of the pandemic getting worse, where are they gonna stand on doing anything about the pandemic? If they're talking about rolling out like protections for renters, right, during a pandemic that people might lose their income, they might get evicted. How can they fairly craft any type of legislation if they're landlords themselves, right? A lot of elected officials are themselves landlords that try to evict tenants, if not directly, then indirectly through like the stock market, like real estate investment trusts, right? Like these are tools, right, that like they have access to, they own all of these things. So, I mean, really at this point, like why are we giving pensions to people who are, deeply invested in this economy? We're supposed to pay them so that they're not getting money in other places. And it's absolutely like pathetic and ridiculous that the United States is in this position where these companies, to a certain extent, don't even need to bribe the politicians, right? Because the politicians are profiting in the same way that the companies are personally through their stocks.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, as Canadian in Hawaii made a great point, stock in Congress should be like playing the lottery. You can't participate if you or your immediate family works for the lottery company. Simple. That's a great point. By the way, so when there was a big focus over the past couple of congressional cycles about campaign finance and corporate donations and things like that, there were pledges to not accept these sorts of donations. So whether it's from particular industries, like there was the no fossil fuel money pledge, or just in general to not accept donations from corporations. Is there any sort of pledge to not participate in individual stock ownership, to only play the market, in the broad sense, mutual funds and those things like that? Like that's an obvious, we should be putting them to the question on this topic and finding out where they stand. It is inarguably corrupt to use the information you have, and yet they largely, aside from Nancy Pelosi, are never required to even talk about it.
John,
I don't know, I feel like we should push for that.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea at all. And for one of the reasons why, by the way, is if you ask Republicans to participate, because remember, they agree more than Democrats do in terms of the voters. They would probably think, oh, this is easy, we'll love doing this, because all the Democrats will say no, and all the Republicans would be super happy to sign on to this pledge. And they will have a rude awakening when they realize not a single Republican politician wants to sign on to this, because they're just as corrupt, if not more corrupt, than the Democrats. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.